All right, everybody, welcome, family. Welcome to another exciting edition of A Shot of Wrestling, the interviews. If you have not done so already, follow us on all forms of social media at A Shot of Wrestling on Facebook and Instagram, and Shot of Wrestling No A on Twitter. You can also contact us via email at inbox@shotofwrestling.com or dial it up 619-343-3005 and leave your comments on the Shot of Wrestling hotline. We say it time and time again that wrestling brings us together, and today is no different. Today we are joined by WCW's own Glacier. How are you, Ray? Welcome to A Shot of Wrestling.
Man. Thank you, bro. It's great to be here, man. You know what? I love that statement you just said. Wrestling brings us together, because it really does. It's brought me into the world of meeting a lot of people that I admired growing up and stuff, and it still does. So I totally get that. I love that. I love that line.
Yeah, there's so many people we've come across, not just the talent that we're meeting as fans, but then also there's some kind of camaraderie between the fans, even at the shows that we go to. Like the independent scene in the Northeast area is blowing up so big. You start seeing the same faces. They become friends. They become family. So it transcends so many different groups.
Yeah, it really does. And I always say, that professional wrestling has the most dedicated fans of any, other sport or entertainment or whatever. And the fans have stuck with wrestling during the bad times, when it was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately right now it's a really, really good time for wrestling, and the fans are really getting to reap the benefits of that, just like all the wrestlers are. So thanks to every fan who's been, dedicated enough to stick with us through all this.
Well, you've been through a large part of different times of eras in professional wrestling. I mean, you started training back when it was the territory days. You made it to WCW, and now the wrestling scene has completely changed with social media, with the amount of talent that is all over the place. What do you feel are some of the big changes that excite you right now about professional wrestling?
You know what? I mean, I was just talking to someone about this a little bit earlier today. Like you said, with social media and everything like that, I think the thing that and there's pros and cons to that, but I think the one thing that's around now that wasn't around when I was coming up is now you have the ability, if you're dedicated enough and work hard enough, to actually promote yourself nationwide or even worldwide, even right out of the gate. And that's something that back when I was coming up in the mid to late 80s, I mean, we didn't have those resources to be able to do that, and now, I laugh now, I for the longest time I never took, once cell phones and GPSs became popular, I had kept this Rand McNally Atlas in the back of my car forever, because I just laugh every time. I just think, man, I don't even know how in the world I made it to towns back in the day, but now you just put it into your phone, and so obviously, times have changed across the board, but that's one of the pros, is that you're able to promote yourself, on a level that guys like me, when we came on, we just didn't have those resources, but also, there's the things that I see that are potential negatives, is that a lot of young wrestlers are just kind of blindly going out there day by day, hoping somehow think that if they put a Facebook post up, someone's going to see it and they'll become a star. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't happen like that. It just doesn't happen like that in anything. I don't care what it is. And people always, they give an example of somebody here or there, and I say, okay, you know what? Yeah, once in a blue moon, lightning in a bottle happens. But do you want to take those odds, or do you really want to take the other odds of really preparing yourself and doing everything in your power you can do to put yourself out to the world? And obviously, anybody with any common sense would choose the one, where you could control most of it. Whatever you can control, you do everything in your power. So once again, I was just telling, one of my buddies today that, I think the art of storytelling in the ring is becoming a dying art. And I really, that's really disappointing, because I love so much of that part of wrestling, but I understand things evolve, wrestling certainly is not immune to that. So, it's become more about what you can do as far as your athleticism. Unfortunately, I think that's going to make for a lot shorter careers for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And but I just really wish that some of and having a wrestling school in Atlanta, it's just I experienced this a lot with my business partner and I, who train people. I always just try to tell them the importance of storytelling, being a masterful storyteller, if you can still do that, it's something that it's really special to be able to do that. And that's, that level of wrestler that, where I think you can proudly say, I am a professional. And a lot of people, I hate to say to these days, they're kind of always say kind of playing professional wrestler.
Right.
They don't get trained properly. They go out there and you can buy everything you need on the internet and your boots and trunks and outfit or whatever, and you can call yourself a wrestler. And there's a lot of people that aren't trained properly, unfortunately, that they go out and get hurt, or do it wrong and or do high risk moves. And it's sad because I mean, I know they love it. At times they go about it the wrong way, and that usually doesn't end well, unfortunately.
And then also you need the right guidance. I think there's so many
Absolutely, yeah.
great individuals like yourself. You mentioned you and your partner have a wrestling school, and give me a little bit more information. So if anybody is in the area where this school's at, where could we get the information if we wanted to join?
Yeah. Our school is in Atlanta, and that's always been a passion of mine. I was fortunate enough to be trained and mentored by some of the greatest in the history of this business. I had my original trainer was a guy named Fred Avery, who is now who was a journeyman wrestler, had a very good career back in the day. Now he went on and got his master's degree. He is a teacher and head wrestling coach at one of the North Florida high schools, and I still stay in touch with him. But as I broke into the business and got going, I ended up crossing paths with the legendary Lou Thesz, who was 6-time NWA World Champion, one of the greatest wrestlers to ever live. I mean, I always say he's the Babe Ruth of our business. And and then of course eventually Dusty Rhodes took me under his wing, and so I got to learn from some of the best. So I'll try to pass that along to people in our school. My business partner, Mike Kilari, who wrestles as QT Marshall, had a great run in Ring of Honor, in NXT. He actually now works a lot backstage with Ring of Honor when they come to the Atlanta area and even other areas. He just recently got back from Las Vegas and they were doing the TV taping out there. But yeah, we partnered with another mentor of mine, Chip Smith, who is one of the top sports performance coaches and trainers in the world. And he has trained more than over 1,800 NFL athletes, including Brian Urlacher, who just went into the Hall of Fame a few months ago, and Champ Bailey, who's going to more than likely go in this year. People of that caliber have come through those doors, and it's 43,000 square foot facility in Atlanta. And we recently had a big super camp, and one of the former WWE coaches even said, like, this is the best training center in the world outside the Performance Center, the WWE Performance Center, and we believe that. And it's a well-rounded training center. Thankfully, there are a lot of good wrestling schools now where there used to not be. There's some good ones in the Atlanta area, North Georgia area. We feel like that what we offer is the most well-rounded experience for anybody who wants to train to be a wrestler.
Yeah.
So yeah, and just chase that dream. But I always say to anybody that contacts us is like the same thing. Are you really serious about doing this? Because that's become kind of our logo. I mean, our slogan is where the serious train. If you want to just play wrestler, this is probably not the place for you because you're going to work hard. But as a teacher, one of the things I learned from one of my mentors as a teacher is work hard but have fun. And I always had a saying, hide the lesson in the fun. Make it fun, and people are much more apt to learn. So that's what we always say. We want people who work hard, but we're going to do our best to make it a good experience and a very positive, supportive environment. But it's called the One Fall Power Factory, and it's in Atlanta, Georgia. We have a great Facebook page. We do updates daily on there. Please check us out. If you have any interest at all in wrestling, someone who really wants to chase the dream of a wrestler, please send us a message so we can at least correspond with you. And when you come to Atlanta, we'd love to have you come out and check out everything. And that's just a big thing for us too, is to have a incredibly supportive environment for guys and girls to train there, because that's a big thing now with the Me Too movement of how females have been exploited and stuff in the industry,
right.
Not just sport but entertainment as a whole. And that's a big thing for us, just to have a safe, supportive environment where there's not a lot of drama. We will not put up with drama. Anybody that causes drama, we tell them to go about your way. This is not the place.
Gotcha.
So but yeah, we're just hoping we can really we became one of only 4 affiliate schools in the world with Ring of Honor about 6 months ago. And they have their new world-class facility in Baltimore. We are one of the very few places in the world where anyone that comes through our school has a direct pipeline, if they have what it takes, and if Ring of Honor is interested to go there to do a direct try. We just had one of our
interesting.
We just had one of our trainees just signed a deal with Ring of Honor to go to move to Baltimore to train full time there, and be accepted as a one of their trainees to go through their program. So yeah, it's there's a tier system there for a reason, and once again, none of that was in place when I came along.
Mm-hmm.
So now there is a game plan. If you're serious enough, you really want to do this, and for the ones that are, as I go through this, I realize that's not as many as I would hope that there are, but that's okay, because the ones who really are willing to do the work will be the ones who put themselves in a position to hopefully get an opportunity. There's no guarantees, especially in this business, but it's like anything else. Do everything you can in your power to get yourself ready, and hopefully the break will come.
Yeah, and what I keep finding is sometimes you could tell someone how hard it is and how much you need to sacrifice to make it, but then you don't really know until you get into it, of how much the sacrifice is. And we've talked to many wrestlers who do sacrifice time away from their wife, their kids, their family. They do the drives, and they're growing up in the business, and they're forgetting that the world around them is also growing up, and they're missing part of that.
Right.
But you mentioned a little bit about storytelling. So
yeah,
that's something that captivates me as a fan. What's the last story, whether it be in the ring or character wise, that you were really invested in as a fan?
Oh, as a fan, wow. That's a really good question. When I was coming up through the 80s, the one thing that just really enthralled me, that I would just make sure everything in my power to make sure I could try to watch, was the ongoing feud between, even though Dusty was my all-time favorite wrestler and my childhood hero, and once again that ended up, I ended up having this incredible relationship and friendship with him and mentorship with him.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other people, like I said, was the feud between Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair,
Mm-hmm.
and the hour-long matches that they had, and that was just the first time as a wrestling fan when I started to think for a second, realistically, wow, this is something that there was a part of me that started to say that would be really cool if I could do that, and
okay.
it could even do part of that. And because when I do a lot of seminars now, and I always emphasize that, go back and watch those matches, and you will see two master storytellers do nothing but pretty much basic fundamental moves,
Mm-hmm.
but do them in a sequence and in an order, and make everything mean something. And Ricky Steamboat, at a seminar he was doing about a year ago, and he had the best philosophy I ever heard. He said, every night I went out there, I challenged the fans to find holes in my work.
Really?
And I just thought, wow, that is so unbelievably spot on, that every wrestler should go out there with that goal, is to be a master storyteller, a master performer, a master athlete, to where you're so good at what you do, you take the wrestling fans on that journey, and they suspend disbelief, and they really buy into what they're seeing, and that's, to me, that's the magic of this business. And unfortunately, it's getting lost a lot today with more emphasis on athleticism rather than storytelling.
Well, if anybody took us on a journey, we take it back to WCW, the debut of Glacier.
Yeah.
That was a journey. And I remember this because I was very glued into the promos and to the hype that was coming up behind it. I'm like, who is this guy? There was so much money and so much time invested into this character, and it could have been anybody.
Sure.
Now thinking back about it, you were Glacier, but the character of Glacier could have been anybody else.
Right.
So walk us through, in your perspective, how did you come to the character Glacier, or did the character Glacier come to you?
No, and it's one of the things that I always tell my trainees and anybody in the seminar. I always tell them there's two great injustices in this world. One is to be completely prepared for something, whatever your career is, and
Mm-hmm.
but the opportunity never comes. That's the biggest injustice in the world. The second biggest injustice in the world is for the break to come and you not be ready for it.
Ooh.
And
Yeah.
I moved to Atlanta in 1990 because I knew I needed to go where the action was. I wanted to be with WCW. I moved from South Georgia, where I went to college and played college football and everything, and had a great career going. But I went there with the intent that I was going to get on board with WCW somehow, some way. I was a school teacher, so I taught school during the week, wrestled every weekend. Usually back then, because I came in during the end of the territory system, I usually could wrestle about 4 nights a week, Wednesday through Sunday or through Saturday usually. And that was because it was a great time during wrestling then. And one of the first things I did was I joined a gym called Main Event Fitness, which was owned by Lex Luger and Sting. I put myself
Mm-hmm.
around the people that could, I always say, put yourself where you want to be, where you want to work,
Right.
and I, and I was pretty decent at the time. I was coming along, eventually became good friends with Diamond Dallas Page, who's still one of my dearest friends to this day, and I'll never forget, Dallas kept trying to find the time to maybe pitch something to Eric, and the timing just never seemed to be right. I knew I was ready about 3 years before I got my break. I knew I was ready. The other thing I tell everybody too is you got to be patient in this business. You could be the most deserving, you could be ready, but that doesn't mean the break's going to come. It took me almost 10 years to the month. I broke in April of 1986.
Mm-hmm.
86. My break came in January of 1996. So 10 years later, I chipped away and worked hard, and the biggest payday, I always tell people, even though I went to UWF in Japan and worked overseas during a 3-year period where I was going during the summers and the holiday breaks, and I made pretty good money there. But in the States, the biggest payday I ever had in wrestling on the indie circuit of those 10 years was, I always used to say $50, but I remember back when I was talking to somebody recently that I think I made $75 one time. But I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it because it was my passion. And I wasn't doing it for the fame and fortune. I was doing it because this is what I really, really wanted to do. And being inside a wrestling ring made me come alive more than anything I'd ever known in my life. And so I had a very clear vision of why I was doing this. Is because this was something that I said, this makes me come alive more than college football, more than martial arts, more than anything. I'm going to find a way to make a living doing this. So I was ready. I was more ready than I could ever been. For 3 years, the break never came. And then one day I was with Dallas, December 23rd, I believe it was, of 1995. We were in the mall in Atlanta. He and I were Christmas shopping. We sat down at a pizza restaurant back when Dallas ate pizza that was not gluten, that was, didn't have gluten-free stuff in it. And I said, Dallas, I'm thinking about putting some martial arts stuff in my ring, what I do in the ring. And he goes, oh, bro, his mouth full of pizza. Bro, that'd be great if you knew some of that stuff. And I said, knowing Paige, he did not say stuff. He said something else. But I said, man, I told him everything. I'd studied since I was about 15 years old. I was really serious into it. Had a great career as a kickboxer and all. He goes, Bischoff's into all that stuff. I had no idea. He goes, tell me more. So he told me more. I said, he goes, let me go back to Bischoff and tell him all this. So he tells Bischoff, and Bischoff say, hey, I like what I hear. Let's get through the holidays, and I want to meet with him afterwards. So it was really the first week of January, I believe. There was a Rest Steakhouse in their neighborhood, right outside of their neighborhood. And back then they really did live about 3 houses apart. And I walk into this restaurant, and at the back of the restaurant there's Bischoff, and I sit down with him, and I can't remember if Paige actually came with us in the beginning or not, which is odd. I should remember that, but I don't. But I just know that eventually it was just me and Eric, and for almost 3 hours, he grilled me up one side down the other about my martial arts, about my wrestling, about everything. The one thing I remember mostly from that meeting is that he never got up to go to the bathroom. And I remember thinking, like at one point, like I was drinking a lot of water. And I was like, I had to really go pee. And I was thinking, I'm not getting up before he does, because if I come back, he may be gone.
Right.
So, but long story short, and there's a lot that I'm leaving out for time's sake. But after it's all said and done, I was speaking with a lot of confidence. I knew I was ready, and he looked at me and he said, well, I like what I hear. And he said, hey, I want to sign you to a contract for WCW. Literally, never saw me wrestle, never saw a tape of me, nothing. And based on Dallas's word and that meeting. And I said, awesome. And so he said, are you working right now? And I had a really great job at that time. I'd left teaching to go with my mentor, Chip Smith. He was the athletic director of the Atlanta Athletic Club, which is one of the most prestigious country clubs in America. And I was the fitness director under him. So I had a good job, and I was not about to just give that up, even though my dream was wrestling. I wasn't about to walk away from that, and without a good deal on the table. And we talked a little bit, and I agreed that it was certainly piqued my interest. And he said, I'll never forget him saying this. He said, let me ask you, are you still wrestling on the independent scene? I said, yes, sir, I am. He goes, well, I'm willing to pay you to disappear from the independent wrestling scene. And I said, I'll never forget him I looked right at him and I go, I can do that. And so that was the beginning of it. But my whole point of that lengthy story is that when the time came, I was ready, and I knew I was ready, and he knew I was ready based on there's always say when you get in a position like that, that's not the time to be humble. And I'm a pretty humble guy,
Right.
but I knew right then I got one shot at this, and I gotta be memorable. When we walk out of this meeting, he's got to remember me, long after, and that's how it started. And little did I know at that time that he had been approached by, the Turner Broadcasting people because of the immense popularity of Mortal Kombat back in the 90s, that they wanted to bring that action to the ring and say, let's see if we can take this and make it work in the wrestling business. And that's what wrestling does. Wrestling, anyone that I always see when people say, oh, it was a Mortal Kombat ripoff. Well, of course it was. That's what was popular in society. And that's what wrestling does. They mimic what's popular in society, and so but we were given the task of making it our own, which I think we really did. And and I will say, over the years, there were critics of it. I get that. But what I've learned, especially here over the last several years, there were a whole lot of fans of it, and I enjoyed it. And and I realized that as we went through it, Dallas has told me several times. He said, you weren't picked because of all this, but as we go through it, I realized, in the 90s, he goes, you were the perfect guy because you could handle the criticism of it, and where a lot of people would have fought back and been defensive, you just let it roll off your back, and I did, because you gotta have critics. And I tell everyone in wrestling that wants to get into this, if you think for one second that that you're not going to get criticized, then you need to stop right now, because I always ask them, who is the biggest star in our business right now? And whether they get it right or not, I always say John Cena.
Yeah.
And and I'm a big fan of John Cena, but there's a big part of the crowd that boos John Cena when he comes out. But you know what? I think he sleeps pretty well at night.
Well, another person that people critique a lot right now is also Brock Lesnar, because he has a lot of media attention with his fights in the UFC. What is going to happen? He's barely around, but I've had a lot of great conversations with people where he's someone who doesn't need to be around. Like even Brooklyn Brawler said it, if you eat steak every single day, you're going to get tired of steak. And that's what Brock Lesnar is. He's that fine piece of meal that, you're looking forward to. When's the next time you're going to see him?
Right, exactly. And
is there any...
Goldberg was the same way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Bill's a good friend of mine. But
I'm sorry. We were talking about getting that big break. Was there any time getting close to it that you ever felt like, because 10 years is a really long time. And when you don't know when it's coming, 10 years could feel like 20 or even a lifetime. Did you ever feel like maybe this wasn't for me? I've already given 10 years of my life to this. Like, how much more do I have to give?
You know what? I'm so glad you asked that, because it is a great question. I never did. And I will tell you this. I think it's one of the things that caused me and Dallas to become great friends, is because Dallas, let's face it, anybody knows Dallas' story knows he was the world's greatest long shot ever. I mean, everybody told him, you're crazy for doing this, breaking into wrestling at 35 years old, and but I've always been an optimist, and like I said, one of my buddies, we were doing an appearance in Macon, Georgia. This was, I don't know, several years ago, probably around 04, 05. And we were walking through a mall. We did an appearance that day. We had a show that night. We're walking through a mall. And granted, a lot of people don't recognize me when I'm in street clothes, because I look drastically different when I'm wrestling. And and I don't have bleached blonde hair anymore, which is, thank God I even have hair these days. But I remember my buddy saying to me, he goes, man, it doesn't bother you when you don't get recognized like you used to. And I said, no, it doesn't bother me, man. You know why? And he's like, well, I said, because that's not why I got into this. I got into this because, like I said, this makes me come alive, man. I mean, there's nothing on the planet that makes me come alive like this. And I said, all the money and the notoriety and all that was just that was an added bonus, but I also was smart enough to realize that doesn't last forever, for anybody.
That's true.
And, but the thing is that, the wrestling business as a whole is, once again, I mean, with, coming up through it, I mean, I do remember. It's funny you asked me that question. Is talking about Main Event Fitness. Is I remember it was coming up on 10 years, and I was leaving Main Event Fitness one night, and I had my bag and I had my jacket, and I was getting ready to leave, and I don't know why it happened at that moment, but I remember it was right by the area where everybody was able to put their bags. I'm standing there, and it was a moment of reflection. I remember it hit me like one of those aha moments, and I remember thinking, man, wow, I mean, this is like the winter of 95. I'm going I'm going to be approaching 10 years here. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, coming up on 10 years and my big break still hasn't happened. And I just remembered like this overwhelming sense of just pride coming over me and saying, you know what? Okay, I'm okay with that. I mean, look what I've got to do. Look who I've got to meet. Look who I became friends with. People who I idolized as a kid. People I earned the respect of in the
Right.
wrestling business that I really looked up to. I got to go to Japan and wrestle for 3 years, and from that I met Luthez, arguably the greatest of all time. And developed a tremendous relationship with him up until he passed away. And it was just like I kept thinking, I was like, man, I don't know, just one of those guys that look at more like what I got out of it. And I thought, you know what? Okay, if this is it, if this is this is high as I go, yeah, I'm okay with that. I can live with that.
You know,
So,
that's a
yeah,
great message, because we're starting to meet a lot new kids who are a lot younger and getting into the wrestling business, who are, coming on from the other side of the guardrail and
yeah,
starting to train. And I remember having a conversation with them recently and saying, from what I've learned, and I haven't been around the business as long as a lot of the people that we talk to. It's just been going on 3 years, learning as much as we can. But we have come a long way. And I think
yeah,
every year you're always going to get a little bit closer and a little bit closer. And, you sometimes need that reflective moment to say, maybe my big break hasn't come yet, but look at how much I've accomplished.
absolutely,
There's so
yeah,
many people who even just have the thought, I would love to do this, to be in the wrestling business, to be a professional
absolutely.
wrestler, and don't even get the courage to sign up to a school, go and train and do what they need to do to make it happen. And it just becomes they're the dreamers, I want to
Yeah.
do it, but I never had the opportunity. And so
Yeah,
that's
and
great.
here's the thing too. There's two things that I always, once again, I always share with our trainees, and I share with anybody I do a seminar with, is because when I do seminars, I teach more of the mental side of the game rather. I mean, the in ring stuff is the in ring stuff, but I teach a lot of what I hope they expect to learn. But two of the things that I really concentrate on, that I tell them about is one is, look, be thankful. Be thankful that you're able to even pursue this dream. And I say, think about the, wherever you wrestle regularly. Think about the fans who come there. Look at those fans, usually the ones that are sitting ringside. Look at those fans there's some of those fans who just physically or mentally or whatever, just are not in a position to ever be realistically able to pursue something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So think about how tremendously fortunate you are to even be able to pursue this, something you really love. And don't take that for granted. And so many people do. And I think it's just because in youth, I was probably the same way when I was younger. But I always try to remind them, like you're a really, really, really special group of people who are able to pursue something they really love. And this is a very demanding thing, that there's a lot of people that pay a ticket to come and they want to be us. But for whatever reason, they aren't able to be physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever,
Right.
or
Mm-hmm.
just their situation, And so we're a very fortunate few who can do this,
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is like, when you're doing something like this, is one thing I go back to, just not taking it for granted, because it's, and I always say to my training, are you doing everything in your power? If you're going to complain to me, are you doing everything in your power to get yourself out there? Because if you're not, then you need to go do that first and then come back to me. But the other thing, and this is the reason why I have always been, I had a veteran wrestler tell me this a long time ago, and it's just one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, is he said to me, what makes professional wrestling different from any other professional sport? And I was like, and I love the fact he asked me the question, because he made me really come up with the answer. And I was him hoeing around, and I never really could, kind of come. And he said, the thing that professional wrestling demands of everyone that any other professional sport does not, is that there's a part of this that is subjective. And the people who
Mm.
are in power,
Yeah.
who can make your dream come true,
Mm-hmm.
have the power to do that. And they have the power to not make your dream come true. And I remember him saying, you can be a pro athlete of any other sport and you can be the biggest jerk in the world, but if you have the talent, somebody's going to sign you because you're a heck of an athlete and you can play that sport, But in the wrestling business, you can be a big jerk and you tick off the wrong person. And they can be, I don't care how talented he is or she is, we're not putting up with that, Or
Mm-hmm.
you can be the most deserving person, but for some reason, the person who's in the power of hiring you, you remind him of the guy his girlfriend ran off with. So he's like, I don't want to be around that. I don't want to be reminded of that. And so you're deserving. It's nothing that's your fault, but that's a reason why it's subjective. So that's what's different about wrestling. And I held on to that early on when I realized, after 6, 7, 8 years, when my break wasn't coming, and that's what kept me going, is that it is subjective. And I'm doing everything in my power, but there's still that element that's only in wrestling, so you got to be, you got to understand that, and you got to accept that, and you got to not let that make you bitter, because it can really quick if you let it.
Gotcha. You seem like a very positive guy, which I am enjoying the conversation. I love talking to positive people. What sign are you, by the way? I'm big into astrology and
Oh, really? My
yeah.
mom was. My mom was too. Yeah, I'm Taurus,
Oh,
May
okay, okay.
13th.
Cool, cool. Have you always been, even as a little kid, always like looking on the brighter side of things or seeing what you could learn from a situation?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I do believe that's something that I was just, very, very fortunate enough to kind of be blessed with. I mean, I had great parents. There's so many people in the wrestling business. You hear their stories and like, oh my God, I grew up in the worst conditions and blah blah blah. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not one of those guys. I have a twin brother, just me and him. My parents were both in law enforcement, which you can tell right there we weren't wealthy. So, but we had a good, solid, loving home, and my dad coached us in everything when we were coming up. My mom was very stern and very loving back then, and she my mom actually dealt out most of the discipline, which is I tell people that now and they go, man, she must have been one hell of a woman. Yes, she was.
Wow.
But no, that's the thing is that and I go back to that's one of the reasons that I think me and Dallas originally connected, and why we're still so connected today is, Dallas's big philosophy in life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. Now, he was not the
Mm-hmm.
first guy to say that, but he was the first guy where that resonated with me. That when
Mm-hmm.
I heard him say it,
Yeah.
and I tell people all the time, you cannot always control what happens to you. Most of the time, you can't. But you can always, always, always control how you react to it. And my God, with Facebook these days and social media,
All
I would
right.
just wish I could tell people, think before you react.
Absolutely. You are absolutely right. You're absolutely right. By the way, do you and Dallas still go Christmas shopping together?
You know what? Yes, whenever we can, yes, we do. And I'm hoping this Christmas we can get together because I love the guy, and we just he was down here at the Performance Center a couple of weeks ago. And we were trying to get together to go to lunch, and our schedules wouldn't line up. But man, I tell you what, I mean, he's I tell people all the time. I mean, if you whatever your path is, no matter how difficult it is, if you think that somehow the universe is picking on you, just go get Positively Page, his book, and read his story, and you'll
Mm,
realize that the universe is really not picking on you solely. I mean, because you're talking about a guy who had more hills to climb than anybody,
yeah.
and fortunately, I was there to see pretty much all of it, which was awesome. But I was there. I tell people all the time, I was there. I was within earshot when he was coming up the ladder before his feud with Macho that really put him on the map.
Mm-hmm.
Or not
Mm-hmm.
put him on the map, but elevated him to that level of a top guy. And I heard. And I don't say a lot of names out there, when it's not relevant. But this was someone who became a Hall of Famer.
Okay.
I remember, and there was an agent at the time, and was saying this really out of like